If you want a man truly hooked, make him feel emotionally safe, admired, challenged, and free. Men don't stay for beauty alone, they stay for connection. The right woman doesn't chase, she triggers his soul. Make him feel chosen, not needed, and he'll never stop wanting more of you. When we talk about emotional addiction in men, one of the most powerful and often overlooked triggers is emotional safety. Not safety in the traditional sense of protecting someone from harm, but the kind of safety that lets a man take off the armor he wears in the world, that armor he uses to impress, to achieve, to perform. Emotional safety is the rare feeling that he doesn't have to earn your acceptance or pretend to be anything other than who he really is. Most men live with the pressure of having to be strong, successful, and in control. That's how they're taught to measure their worth. But deep down, even the most confident man carries insecurities, doubts, and fears he rarely shares. And when he meets a woman who doesn't judge him for those parts, who listens instead of fixing, who understands instead of analyzing, it's like he's found a home he didn't know he was looking for. Emotional safety starts in the smallest of moments. It's when you don't flinch when he shares something raw. It's when you don't weaponize his vulnerability in a future argument. It's when you let him have space without assuming he's losing interest. In a world where men constantly have to prove themselves, being with someone who offers peace, not pressure, becomes a form of emotional oxygen. This doesn't mean babying him or tolerating emotional unavailability. Quite the opposite. It means holding space for realness. It means showing him that you're not impressed by the mask. You're moved by the man underneath it. When he sees that he can be imperfect and still deeply accepted, he stops feeling the need to perform. That's when a deeper connection begins. That's when the addiction starts. Not to a fantasy, but to the rare reality of being fully seen and still wanted. Most women try to create attraction by amplifying their looks, their charm, or their accomplishments, but few realize the magnetic power of becoming the one person he feels completely himself with. That's what he'll crave long after the initial chemistry fades. That's what keeps him thinking about you when he's alone. That's what makes him want to protect, invest, and never let go. And what's truly powerful about emotional safety is that it creates a feedback loop. When a man feels safe, he starts opening up more. When he opens up more, he feels even more connected. That connection deepens his desire to be close, to be better, to be present. You're no longer just the woman he dates. You become the woman who gets the version of him no one else gets. Emotional safety isn't soft. It's strong, it's not passive, it's intentional, and for the right man, it's unforgettable, because he might admire a lot of women, but the one he emotionally bonds with, that's the woman he can't forget. That's the addiction he doesn't want to cure. There's a massive difference between validation and admiration, and understanding that difference is what separates a connection that fizzles out from one that deeply hooks a man. Validation is what he gets from the world, from likes, followers, praise, or even women telling him he's hot, smart, or successful. Admiration, on the other hand, is what speaks to his core. It tells him that who he is, not just what he does, is seen, valued, and respected by someone whose opinion genuinely matters. Validation is easy to give. Anyone can offer it. A quick compliment, a flirty laugh, an ego boost. And don't get me wrong, those things feel good, but they're fleeting. A man might enjoy being validated, but it doesn't anchor him emotionally. It doesn't make him want to stay. What makes him emotionally addicted is admiration. Real, earned, meaningful admiration from a woman who doesn't hand it out like candy. When a man senses that your admiration is selective, that you don't just admire any guy who gives you attention, it triggers something powerful in him. It tells him that if you admire him, it means he's doing something right on a deeper level, that he's showing up in a way that's rare, in a way that resonates with your standards, your values, your heart. Men thrive when they feel respected, and when your admiration reflects that respect, not for his car, his job, or his abs, but for how he thinks, how he handles pressure, how he treats people, how he protects what he loves, it goes far beyond surface level attraction. He doesn't just feel good around you, he feels proud, and that pride becomes a drug. He starts chasing that feeling not because it strokes his ego, but because it strengthens his identity. And here's the part most people miss. True admiration has to be authentic. You can't fake it. A man knows when you're just saying things to keep him interested. He knows when you're overly enthusiastic about things that don't even move you. But when he sees your eyes light up after he handles a tough situation with grace, or when you tell him that you admire how he carries himself in the face of adversity, that hits different. That sticks with him. That becomes emotional glue. This doesn't mean constantly showering him with praise. In fact, over-validating can make a man feel like you're trying too hard to win him. Instead, admiration should be earned through observation, through patience, through watching how he moves in the world and choosing intentionally to let him know that you see him. Not the image, not the resume, the man. When a woman admires a man for the right reasons, he doesn't just feel wanted, he feels understood. And when he feels understood by someone he respects, that's the moment he starts showing up in ways even he didn't expect from himself. That's when he stops playing games and starts committing from a place of pride, not pressure, because in you, he sees a mirror of the man he wants to become, and that feeling is addictive. Mystery and challenge are two forces that create emotional gravity in a relationship, not because they're manipulative, but because they awaken a man's desire to engage, explore, and earn connection. The truth is, men don't fall for what's given too easily. They fall for what they feel they've discovered and what continues to surprise them long after the first impression. Mystery isn't about hiding who you are. It's not about being distant, cold, or unavailable. It's about being layered. It's about not revealing everything at once. When a woman holds back just enough to let a man lean in, ask questions, and peel back the layers of her personality, she activates a part of him that loves pursuit. Not in a childish way, but in a primal, meaningful way. He doesn't just want to be around her, he wants to understand her. And the more he tries to understand, the more emotionally invested he becomes. Challenge isn't about playing hard to get, it's about being worth the effort. A man becomes emotionally addicted when he feels like he has to show up as his best to keep your attention. Not because you're playing games, but because your standards are clear. You're not waiting to be chosen. You're evaluating, observing, and deciding if he meets the life you've already built. That subtle shift, from seeking validation to offering alignment, creates a dynamic where he respects your time, your energy, and your presence. What keeps a man thinking about you isn't constant availability. It's moments of deep connection followed by space. It's knowing that while you care about him, your world doesn't revolve around him. That you have passions, goals, people, and routines that matter to you with or without him. That balance between intimacy and independence makes a man feel like he has to earn his place in your life. And when he earns it, he values it. When he values it, he protects it. That's where the addiction grows. Men are wired to chase meaning. They want to feel like they've won something rare, something not every guy gets access to. When you're mysterious in your energy, not just your words, when you don't overshare every detail of your emotions too soon, when you let him discover you in moments, not marathons, you create anticipation, and anticipation is a form of emotional tension. It's the glue that keeps someone coming back, not because they're confused, but because they're intrigued. Challenge also speaks to how you react. Do you let him coast with minimal effort, or do you reflect back the standard of what you expect from a man who wants to be with you? Do you challenge him to rise, not with pressure, but with presence? When he knows he can't take you for granted, when he feels your emotional standards, he starts to lean in differently. He starts to invest. The man who is addicted to you emotionally isn't confused or frustrated. He's engaged. He's curious. He's driven. Because you've given him a path that's not only rewarding, but real. And that's the kind of challenge he won't walk away from. Emotional reciprocity is one of the deepest and most magnetic forces in a relationship. It's what makes a man feel like he's not alone in his efforts, that he's not pouring into someone who is just absorbing, but someone who is actively matching, responding, and building something with him. It's not about keeping score, but it's absolutely about balance. A man becomes emotionally addicted when he feels seen, appreciated, and emotionally met. When he feels like what he gives is mirrored, not taken for granted. Too often, we think emotional availability means always giving more love, more attention, more effort. But if a man feels like he's always the one initiating, always the one carrying the emotional weight, he'll eventually pull back, not because he doesn't care, but because it starts to feel one-sided. On the flip side, if you're always the one over-functioning, over-texting, over-analyzing, over-giving, he doesn't have to step up. He doesn't have to invest. Emotional reciprocity disappears, and so does his attraction. What hooks a man isn't being overly accommodating. It's when he sees that you respond to his energy, not chase it. When he feels that his vulnerability is met with yours. That when he opens up, you don't just listen, you match his depth. That when he plans something thoughtful, you acknowledge it, appreciate it, and offer your own gesture in return. Not because you're trying to impress, but because you're in it with him. That exchange of emotional energy becomes the fuel that keeps the fire burning. And here's the subtlety. Emotional reciprocity doesn't mean doing the exact same things. It means emotionally giving in a way that feels balanced and connected. Maybe he's not as verbal with his feelings, but he shows love through actions. Maybe you're more expressive, but you notice and honor the effort behind what he does. It's about understanding each other's emotional language and responding in kind, not demanding sameness, but offering alignment. Men become emotionally addicted to women who make them feel like what they give matters, who don't just take, but build, who don't just show up when things are easy, but are present when it counts. And that presence goes both ways. If he sees you showing up for him emotionally, not just with words, but with time, care, understanding, he starts to believe that this isn't just a relationship he's pursuing, it's a connection you're nurturing together. Reciprocity also shows up in emotional availability. If he makes space for your emotions, do you make space for his? If he shares a fear, do you dismiss it or lean in and support? When he feels that mutual give and take, not just physically or practically, but emotionally, it builds a sense of safety, trust, and emotional depth that keeps him engaged. In a world full of emotional takers, being someone who matches energy, gives where it's deserved, and remains emotionally attuned without overextending is rare. That kind of woman doesn't just attract a man, she keeps him invested, because the relationship becomes a reflection of effort, and that makes him want to keep showing up, again and again. One of the most misunderstood emotional triggers in men is the need for freedom within the bond. Most people assume that when a man loves you, he should want to be around you all the time, share everything, and be fully immersed in the relationship. But what truly keeps a man emotionally addicted isn't total closeness. It's the rare experience of being in a relationship where he feels deeply connected and free at the same time. That paradox is powerful, it's rare, and it's what keeps him coming back, not out of obligation, but out of desire. Freedom within the bond means he doesn't feel like he's losing himself to be with you. It means the relationship doesn't threaten his independence, his goals, or his sense of personal identity. A man becomes emotionally addicted to a woman who doesn't try to control his time, but instead gives him space to be his full self, and trusts that the connection is strong enough to hold. That kind of confidence is magnetic. It shows you're secure in your own life, not dependent on the relationship to give you value. When a man feels suffocated, even in the smallest ways, constant check-ins, needing constant reassurance, questioning his every move, he starts to associate the relationship with pressure instead of peace. But when he feels trusted, when he feels that he can have space to breathe without being punished emotionally, he starts to lean in more, not less. Because instead of feeling like he's losing something, he feels like he's gaining someone who understands him in a way most people don't. What makes this dynamic even more powerful is that men who are truly committed will naturally return to the woman who gives them freedom, not because they feel guilty, but because they choose her. And that choice, made over and over, freely, is what builds lasting emotional attachment. When he knows you're not trying to possess him, but rather experience life with him, he feels a deeper connection. He feels peace in your presence, not performance. And that peace becomes addictive. Freedom also shows up in emotional expression, letting him have his moods without forcing him to explain every emotion, giving him time to process, knowing it doesn't mean he's checked out, supporting his passions even if they don't involve you. When a man feels like he can still pursue his individuality without losing your love, he gives that love back in full because he no longer sees the relationship as something that restricts him, but something that strengthens him. This isn't about being detached or pretending not to care. It's about knowing that real love doesn't cling, it holds space. And when you hold space for a man in this way, he doesn't run, he doesn't withdraw, he grows, he steps up, he commits, not because he has to, but because he wants to. Because in you, he found something extraordinary, the freedom to be himself and the bond that makes him never want to be without you. Consistent feminine energy is one of the most captivating emotional triggers that keep a man deeply connected and drawn in. Not because it conforms to some outdated idea of what a woman should be, but because it creates a space where a man feels both inspired and emotionally anchored. Feminine energy, when it's authentic and consistent, isn't about softness or submission. It's about presence, intuition, radiance, and emotional groundedness. And when that energy is steady, not flipping between extremes, it becomes something he doesn't just notice, he feels. And once he feels it, he starts craving it. What pulls a man in is the way your feminine energy makes him feel. It's the ease in your body language. It's the playfulness in your tone. It's the calm strength in how you handle conflict without turning everything into war. Feminine energy is about emotional flow. But when it's consistent, it builds emotional safety. He starts to feel like you're not reacting from fear, insecurity, or ego. You're responding from clarity, from confidence, from peace. That steadiness is magnetic. A lot of people can be charming, sexy, or exciting in short bursts. But what becomes addictive to a man is a woman whose energy is predictable in the best way, not dull, but grounded. She's not hot one day and distant the next. She's not warm until she doesn't get her way. She's not loving only when he performs. Her feminine energy isn't a show, it's a way of being, open, emotionally intelligent, confident without force, vulnerable without neediness. This consistency allows a man to let go of his own defenses. When he knows what kind of emotional world he's stepping into with you, he starts to relax. He starts showing up with more presence, more openness, and more leadership, because your energy invites it, not demands it. He's not left guessing what mood you're in, or whether today's version of you will be calm or chaotic. Instead, your energy becomes a refuge, something he wants to return to again and again. And consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means even when you're upset, your emotional tone doesn't become destructive. You still express, but with honesty rather than volatility. You still feel, but you don't weaponize those feelings. That kind of emotional maturity, wrapped in the softness, grace, and natural depth of feminine energy, is rare. And in a world full of emotional extremes, that is what sets you apart. A man doesn't get emotionally addicted to someone who just excites him. He gets addicted to the one who emotionally balances him, who brings light without chaos, depth without drama, passion without pressure. When your feminine energy is consistent, he doesn't just want to be around you, he needs to be around you, because you don't just stir something in him, you center him, and that feeling is unforgettable. Every man, whether he speaks it out loud or not, is driven by a sense of mission, something he wants to build, achieve, or become. It could be his career, his personal growth, his impact in the world, or simply becoming the kind of man he's proud of. And when a woman not only understands that drive but deeply respects it, something powerful happens. She stops being just someone he dates and becomes someone he sees as a real partner in his purpose. Men are wired to feel fulfillment through progress. It's how they measure their value, how they test their strength, and how they feel alive. So when a man shares his dreams, his ideas, his struggles with what he's building, and a woman listens with interest, not just for what it means for her, but for what it means to him, he begins to feel emotionally connected on a level most people never reach. He doesn't feel like he has to choose between love and purpose. He feels like he's finally found someone who fuels both. Respecting his mission isn't about agreeing with everything he does or putting him on a pedestal. It's about seeing the bigger picture of who he's trying to become and honoring that journey, even when it's inconvenient, even when it means giving him space. It's about letting him know that his ambition doesn't threaten the relationship, it feeds it, that you want to stand beside a man who's chasing something greater than comfort, that his vision matters to you because he matters to you. Too often, women fall into one of two traps. They either sacrifice their own needs entirely for his mission, or they compete with it, wanting to be his whole world. Neither creates emotional addiction. What does is being the woman who holds her own mission while respecting his, who doesn't lose herself in what he's building, but cheers him on from a place of strength, not sacrifice. That balance creates a dynamic of mutual respect. He sees you not as someone dependent on his success, but as someone who believes in it, and that belief becomes fuel. When you respect his mission, you speak to the part of him that wants to provide, protect, lead, not because he has to, but because it's in his nature. And when you recognize the weight he carries without trying to take it away or make it about you, he starts to feel emotionally understood in a way that very few people ever make him feel. That understanding builds loyalty, it builds desire, it builds long-term emotional investment. You don't have to become part of his mission to support it. You just have to show that you see it, that you value what he's working toward, and that you respect the man he's becoming in the process. Because when a man feels like you're not just in love with who he is now, but with who he's becoming, that kind of respect is unforgettable. It makes him addicted, not just to the relationship, but to becoming the best version of himself, with you beside him. There's something profoundly magnetic about being chosen, not because someone needs you, but because they want you. For a man, this is one of the deepest emotional triggers there is. When a woman makes him feel like she's whole on her own, like she doesn't need him to feel complete, but chooses him to be part of her already fulfilling life, that hits different. That's not desperation, that's desire. And desire is what creates emotional addiction. Men are incredibly sensitive to energy. They may not always articulate it, but they feel when they're being pulled into a relationship to fill a void. When a woman needs someone to make her happy, distract her from loneliness, or give her life purpose, he might stick around for a while, but it won't create the kind of emotional bond that keeps him hooked. Why? Because he knows he's not being loved for who he is. He's being used to patch a gap she hasn't filled herself. But when a woman is confident in her own life, when she's already fulfilled, connected, and in alignment with her own purpose, her attraction to him feels intentional, not accidental. He knows she didn't just fall into his arms out of emotional emptiness. She chose him out of abundance. And that choice tells him he must be bringing real value to her life, that he adds something meaningful, that she desires him, not depends on him. And that's where the bond deepens. There's a unique power in being the one someone wants rather than the one they need. It tells a man, I'm not with you because I can't live without you. I'm with you because life is better with you in it. That message makes him feel honored. It makes him rise. It makes him want to show up, not just to keep you, but because he feels emotionally invested in the partnership. Men often feel pressure to be the provider of happiness, of solutions, of emotional stability. But when he meets a woman who already carries those things within herself, he doesn't feel burdened. He feels invited. Invited to be part of a life that's already rich, already joyful. That kind of energy is irresistible. It doesn't scream, please pick me. It softly, powerfully says, I'm choosing you. And here's the truth. When a woman chooses a man from a place of wholeness, he doesn't feel replaceable. He doesn't feel like any man could have filled that role. He feels special. he feels seen. And when a man feels chosen in that way, without pressure, without neediness, he becomes emotionally invested on a deep level. Because now he's not just part of your life, he's proud to be part of it. Need creates obligation. Choice creates desire. And desire is what keeps a man thinking about you long after the conversations fade, long after the chemistry cools. Because what he felt with you wasn't a rescue mission. It was a conscious connection. And nothing draws a man in like knowing you could live without him, but you don't want to. Unexpected emotional moments are often the invisible thread that ties a man to a woman in a way he can't explain, but deeply feels. These aren't grand gestures or perfectly planned dates. They're not the result of strategies or scripts. These are raw, unscripted moments that catch him off guard, not because they're dramatic, but because they're real. And it's in those moments that a man experiences something far more potent than attraction, emotional imprinting. A man can go through hundreds of surface-level connections in his life, but the ones he remembers are the ones that felt different. Not because of how someone looked, but because of how someone made him feel. Especially in moments he wasn't expecting to feel anything at all, like laughing uncontrollably over something stupid, like the quiet comfort of just sitting together in silence without it feeling awkward, like catching a glimpse of your passion when you talk about something that lights you up, or hearing your voice soften as you share something vulnerable, not for attention, but for connection. These moments don't shout, they whisper, and that's why they hit so deeply. Because in a world where so much is curated, posed, and filtered, authenticity feels revolutionary. When you allow space for these unguarded moments, when you're present enough to notice them instead of rushing past them, you give a man something rare, emotional reality, something he didn't see coming. And when a moment touches his heart before his mind can analyze it, that's when emotional addiction begins. It could be a spontaneous compliment that hits him at just the right time, or the way you stood up for yourself, not with anger, but with grace, or how you gently called him out on something, not to criticize, but because you care. It could even be how you looked at him when he was talking about something he was insecure about, and you didn't laugh, flinch, or change the subject. You just held space, and in doing that, you made him feel safe, accepted, even cherished. These are the emotional snapshots that stay in his mind. That moment in the car when your favorite song came on and you started dancing like nobody was watching. That look you gave him after he did something small but thoughtful. That conversation at 2 a.m. when your guard dropped and his did too. Those moments don't require effort. They require presence. They require you to be in the moment rather than managing it. And the beauty of these moments is they can't be forced. They emerge when two people are relaxed enough to be themselves, and when a man experiences enough of those with you, he starts to associate you with something more than attraction. You become the person he feels most himself with, and once he feels that, it's hard for him to walk away. Not because you're perfect, but because those unexpected emotional moments made a permanent home in his memory. Emotional growth together is one of the most powerful and lasting triggers that bond a man to a woman. It's not just about chemistry, compatibility, or shared interests. It's about the feeling that being with you makes him a better version of himself. When a man senses that he's evolving emotionally because of your presence, your energy, and your standards, he doesn't just stay, he invests. Because now, the relationship isn't just a source of pleasure, it's a source of progress. And growth is addictive. Most people think love is about finding someone who accepts you as you are, and while that's a part of it, the real magic happens when someone loves you as you are, but also inspires you to become more. A man falls deeply for the woman who challenges him, not through criticism or control, but through her own example. When he sees you striving, self-reflecting, communicating with depth, and handling emotions with maturity, it plants a seed in him. It shows him another way. It makes him want to match that energy. This kind of growth isn't about being someone's teacher or project. It's about co-evolution. It's the feeling of being on a journey together, where both of you are learning, expanding, and leveling up. Not because you have to, but because you want to. That shared emotional momentum creates an unspoken bond. It makes the relationship feel like a place of movement, not stagnation. And for a man, that sense of forward motion is everything. Emotional growth also shows up in the hard moments. When there's conflict, it's not about who wins. It's about what you learn about each other. When he sees that instead of blowing up or shutting down, you open up, communicate with clarity, and handle tension with emotional intelligence, it models behavior he may never have seen before. And when he feels safe enough to do the same, he starts stepping into his own emotional maturity. Not because you pushed him, but because you showed him what was possible. Even small shifts, when shared, are powerful. Maybe he starts talking about his feelings more. Maybe he begins to reflect instead of react. Maybe he starts setting healthier boundaries, not just with you, but with others. These changes might seem subtle, but they are signs of emotional evolution. And when those shifts are happening with you, and because of you, it builds a connection that runs deeper than surface-level attraction.